Thank you so much, ma'am. Shall we give another round of applause? A bigger one. And one of the last words, or some of the last words of Madam Beatrice Hajima was that everyone must be a guardian of truth, since everyone is a publisher. Thank you so much for these words. At this moment, I would like to invite our panel here. We'll be going deeply into this very conversation of combating misinformation in the digital age. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, would you please help me welcome Mr. Amiao Deborah to join us on the panel. Thank you so much, please. We're also honored to have with us Mr. Kweku K. Krobia. Please, a round of applause for him as he joins us. Of course, we have the lady in our midst as well on this panel, Madam Ernestina Sante. Please, a round of applause for her. And of course, last but not the least, we have Mr. Jerry Sam. Please, another round of applause for her, for him, I beg your pardon. Thank you so much. So our panel is set, and we're going to go into this very conversation, and hopefully by the end of our discussion, we should be able to have some solutions proposed. And we heard our group CEO say, Madam Beatrice Hajima, tell us that in December, when we come for the full festival, we are not going to be presenting solutions. We're going to show it, actually. We're going to show what would have done between now and that time. Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for joining us once again. I would love to start with you, Mr. Amiao Deborah. Please, your microphones are, if you can see them. Wonderful. Yes, you're going to take us through really what it means for us to have misinformation. Perhaps we'll lay that background first, because we understand that there's misinformation and disinformation. And earlier, Madam Asante, before we came on air, I heard you trying to give us a bit of information about that, and the fact that over the years, even in recent times, we've had a number of conferences, and right here in Ghana, there was a conversation that was held just a couple of months ago, where media people and those in the digital space agreed that when you come to Ghana, a lot of the issues we have to do with propaganda and media houses being in a hurry to publish information rather than checking it because it broke on social media and they don't want to be last going out with the information. So first, let me tell us again that Mr. Amiao Deborah is a celebrity blogger. He's a digital media entrepreneur, and of course, one of the most recognized digital influential media personalities. So please help me again, just welcome him with another round of applause. And of course, Mr. Kweku K. Krobia also is a manager with the Fourth Estate and Fact Check Ghana, does investigations, in-depth investigations, also fact checks, and other issues related to the media and the digital space. Please, another round of applause for him as well. Thank you for joining us. Madam Ernestina Asante, digital editor at Ghana Web, and you manage content, verifying whether or not it's true, and the process as well that goes with it. Please, another round of applause for her. Good morning to you, ma'am. And of course, last but not the least, Mr. Jerry Sam, Executive Director, Pen Plus Byte. And you are an expert in media development, innovation, and good governance in Africa. Don't we need that? Good morning to you, sir. Thank you. Another round of applause for him. All right, so let me start with you, Mr. Amiao Deborah, first of all. And I heard you in that conversation again with my colleague, Michael Obudu, about how you manage the space. If you could first tell us misinformation and disinformation. Let's have clarity on that before we go into really the challenges and what we need to do.
I think both of them have to deal with putting up wrong information, but disinformation has intent behind it. You do it on purpose, or you are aware that what you're putting out there is not true, but you're putting it out. And it happens for a number of reasons. Sometimes we are just quick to put out information, and then we are not doing the right checks to verify so that we don't end up misinforming. And sometimes it's just the information is not there. So we run with what we think we have. And then that moment, it may seem like the right thing, but a few moments down the line, you realize that it wasn't as accurate as you put it out. So as for the disingenuous behind disinformation, I don't even want to talk about it. For you to deliberately want to put something out, that is just not right. But sometimes we slip in our jobs. You cannot be perfect, and so a little misinformation is not always it's expected. But then I think also it's important for us to have mechanisms to quickly rectify it once we know what we put out is wrong, because like we said in our intro, good information may take a long time to travel, but the wrong one or the bad one has legs of electricity and it moves faster. So I think as human as we are, we should be aware that we may not always get it right, but when we get it wrong, we should equally act quickly so that we're able to repair whatever damage it might have caused.
Thank you very much. Briefly, Madam Asante, if you can add just a bit to it. I mean, Ghana, we're one of the leading websites in Ghana as well. And in the media space, we're expected to cross our T's and dot our I's. What have you got to add briefly to that before we set the conversation going?
Right. So just like Amayal said, misinformation is you not knowing or getting your facts right before putting out the information. And then with disinformation, you know that what you are putting out is wrong. But because of your ill intent, you decide to let it go for your own agenda. Now, research has shown that 8 million people use social media, and then 90% of the population also have access to smartphones. So once again, like he said, once you post something and it is wrong, it travels faster. Even if you come back to correct it, not all of them will be willing to even read and then know that you've made some changes or corrections in the earlier content that you posted. So we have to be careful. And in as much as people do not read, you should still correct it because the internet, they say, never forgets.
Indeed. And it's on this note I want to come to you, Mr. Korbia, because Fourth Estate, you publish a lot of in-depth investigative stuff as well. If you can help us understand the landscape of misinformation in Ghana, to what extent this is such a problem that we need to deal with it as quickly as possible.
Well, thank you very much and a good morning to everybody, especially one to colleagues here. I think when we want to map the landscape of disinformation, we have to start from the mainstream media, right? There's a tendency to always situate this conversation on social media or maybe blame the bloggers, you know, or the digital aspect of things. But the problem is so endemic that it starts with the mainstream media. In fact, if I am to even stretch further, we may want to even go into the cultural essence of who we are and how we appreciate information, right? You know, I've often talked about the culture of getting information and not verifying. We have this yes culture, right? You hear information can travel from one end to the other, and nobody will have the consciousness to ask, who said it? You know, you see, have you heard they are saying that this, that. As much as damning the information is, nobody gets the consciousness to ask. And so we pass it on, until it gets to a point and we realize that there's so much damage, and then we say, where is this one coming from?
Are we not asking or failing to ask because perhaps people trust the source? Because I've had an experience, for instance, years ago, where a local dialect media house reported that it had rained heavily in Eastern region. I remember very well. And a number of buildings had collapsed, and some people had even died. They were yet to confirm that. And because we trusted that media house, we went ahead and did the story as a headline news at 10 o'clock. And it wasn't true.
That even in this narrative, there exists the problem of, to the next point I want to make about the mainstream media. You see, if you have not verified the information for yourself, and you run a headline to say, it has rained in Eastern region, and this is the problem that happened with the marathon thing, the Millennium Chef problem. Somebody comes and holds a press conference and says, Guinness world record or books record has given me this award. Instead of we writing the story to say, Chef Smith says Guinness World Record has given him the title, or has given him, the person holding the title, we run the headline to say, Chef Smith has been awarded the title, as if we have independently verified. Now, for journalists who are among us, they would appreciate the point I'm trying to make. That if you do not verify the information yourself, you do not in any form attempt to say it has happened. At best, you say, sources say that, or attribute it to the person who said it, so that if tomorrow what the person said turns out to be false, your defense will be that it was the person who said it, and we're just quoting the person, right? Now, back to my point, it is not because we trust the source, but it is because intrinsically as tradition and culture, we have not really tried to ask for sources, to demand for evidence, sometimes out of sheer respect. And there's also that power distance index. Because the person is a top politician, is a big man, is a big businessman, if he says it, we must carry it as it is. Nobody would want to step in and say, where did you get that information from, sir? Because we think that we will hurt the sensibilities of the big man. And so we have to run the story like that. But beyond that, coming to the mainstream media, the problem of ownership, ownership patterns, the problem of capacity building, the way we bring people into the mainstream media is the challenge. A lot of the broadcast media outlets, especially the local language broadcast media, we bring in people without giving them proper training. I admit that doing radio and TV comes with a certain form of talent. You need to have the oratory, the ability to speak. Look, when you were opening, the program, I'm like, whoa, I will not be able to do this. A lot of people hear action, and then the words have to flow off the tip of your tongue. I'm like, what if you make a mistake or you slip? Like, hey, my mistake, forgive me or something like that. But you guys are able to do it. So there's a certain aspect of talent in there. But what we do is that we do not train the people in the proper ethics and rudiments of journalism. We meet you at the funeral, you are the announcer, you have the skill, you can speak the language very well. We corner you and say, come and see me in the office tomorrow. The following day, we'll put you beside the person who presents the news and say, watch and learn. The person presents the new one too. The following time, we give to you, and then it becomes a contest of who can really amuse the audience or use the language beautifully and move it, right? But that's even to the local language. But even to the mainstream media, I've spoken about ownership patterns and how they influence, how content is published. Look, if you open this misinformation conversation, we can really stretch it very wide. It's a problem of information laundering. Another media house will do one story. A politician will call the other person, call the other person, call the other person. And they will invite the other people and will not invite the other person to speak. Because balance is supposed to be an ethical principle that we must all keep note of. Or we will pay journalists so that they can clean the story, or do whatever you want to do. Then we switch to the digital aspect of things, right? And that's where the problem becomes haywire.
Before you go to the digital bit, just a bit of clarity. When you say ownership dynamics, are you referring to who owns a media house, whether it's a politician or a businessman, and how that could influence what kind of information comes out?
Thank you very much. I mean, you are the broadcaster here. The point is that The data currently shows that a good part of the media outlets are owned by politicians. You know, there's a tendency for you to think that Media General or Multimedia or EIB are just the media outlets in Ghana. No. Go down. Go into the other regions. Many MPs have radio stations. I don't want to say most MPs because I have not done any analysis. But many MPs have set up radio stations. Some of them will not openly admit to it, but the radio stations are doing their bidding in the sense that they are not so much interested in publishing factual information or news. They are interested in ensuring that the politician comes into power. And at Media Foundation for West Africa, we have done this language monitoring work where we have engaged media houses and say, our data shows that you are abusing on radio. And it says, as for us, we are not here because of your media things. So Honorable must come to power. And so that's where we're supposed to be. I know your time. Let me just make the last point.
Up with the digital bit.
On the digital aspect of things, you know, there's this culture, what we call the news on demand culture, right? Everything moves fast. But Madam Beatrice was talking about those times when breaking news was 6 p.m. The story has broken somewhere around 1 p.m. Unfortunately, midday news is gone. So you have to wait till 6 p.m. But now social media, somebody shows up there and turns on the camera and says, this is where I am. And so we are also forced to do all that. But then again, because social media or the data platform affords people anonymity, there's a sense of nobody can hold me to account. I create a certain fake account, you can't find me, you don't know me, I will share what I want and I will go away, right? But I need to make a point that because of that anonymity, different funny characters begins to own that space and then do what they want, including politicians.
And we'll go back to that conversation about anonymity and how, for instance, agencies in the country intend to deal with that, so that the fact that you are anonymous doesn't mean you can run away, because we're going to check your IP address and all of that to deal with you.
Yeah,
but let me get, the preliminary thoughts as well of Mr. Jerry Sam. And just picking it up from where Mr. Kobia ended almost, actually, when he talked about capacity building of journalists or media persons, and you're an expert in that, media development as well as governance expert, because earlier I was also talking about some of the things that they had identified as the source of misinformation, including propaganda. How do these contribute to the challenge we're having right now?
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. I'm pleased to be here. First, I want us to differentiate between ignorance and intent. So you asked a very good question, which my co-panelists made justice to it. But then misinformation really does not have intent to harm. So it's the intent behind it. And we need to separate the intent and the ignorance. So during the pandemics, we had people out of anxiety and fear came out with some home solutions, homemade cures. So, I mean, during the COVID, we said we should drink hot beverages. We should drink neem tree in hot water. Those are not intent to harm, but then it's like providing solutions. But this information is deliberate, deliberate concocting or manufacturing information to manipulate opinions and also to cause harm. And these are the ones that are being used to cause violence, for instance, in Boko, vaccine hesitancy, and all of that. Once we know the intent, then we can find the right solution to it. So, for instance, with the misinformation, you can cure it by just mere education. But when it's disinformation, then it requires coordinated efforts. So I remember ahead of the 2024 elections, Kweku and the rest of fact checkers came up to do a coalition, basically to expose those networks behind disinformation, sometimes even go as far as take legal action as well, and also hold the platforms to account. When I talk about platforms, I mean the big tech platforms. But back to your question on the media, I still think the media is still the bulwark of our trust in curbing disinformation, because, sometimes you see content online, and then somebody will say, oh, has TV3 also said it? Or has Daily Graphic reported it? And that gives me some sort of assurance and reassurance that people still believe that traditional media is the credible source that we need to fall back on. And these are the well-established traditional platforms. But the key thing for the traditional media is resources. I mean, there's woefully lack of resources, which cuts across who you employ, even payments. I mean, there's a recent research that Media Foundation, University of Ghana did. One of the key issues that came up was, remuneration for journalists. So they move off, you train them in-house, before you know somebody else has come to poach them. You have to bring in somebody new. So the resources factor is a very big thing that we need to look at. One of the things that we look out for is that newsrooms should even have fact-checking desk. How are you going to resource that? The fact-checking desk will look at user-generated content that comes out, because you still pick news from social media. You can't be everywhere. I mean, you still listen to bloggers who are right at where the incident happened. You pick it up and you echo it. Once you echo it without verifying, then you become inadvertently, you're also, advancing or amplifying disinformation.
So, for instance, right here at Media Journal, we do have a research desk. When you say that fact-checking desk, are you trying to, how different is it from a research desk, for instance?
It plays similar role. So the news item comes in, you're not sure, the research desk will go further, make calls, find alternative views, or make sure that you get the right images. Because some misinformation actually comes. Sometimes the news comes, there's a flood. You don't have the flood picture. So you go and dig through your library, and you pick 1970 flood picture. Meanwhile, if you see the density of the flood or even the volume of the flood, it's totally different. And you're misinforming people because maybe the 1970 picture, the flood was heavier than today's own. I'll panic, for instance. So if we have that desk well-resourced, then it's better. The other thing also that traditional media needs to do is support the work of civil society in advancing the work of digital and media literacy so that people understand how the news processes is done, how you go out on the field to gather news, what are the verification processes that you go through, so that when I see a headline, I can clearly see that this is an emotionally charged headline. This is not what TV3 will normally do. Then I can go back behind the news and see whether this is actually misinforming or disinforming.
And I'll come back to you, Mr. Sam. I want to get your thoughts again, Madam Asante, because you're in charge of the content that goes on Ghana Web and even the processes, the digital processes that you have to use. If you're able to tell us, for instance, what AI tools or the systems that are available to ensure that this picture is really not it is in this scenario and this story is not what it is.
Okay, so some of the AI tools we use is the Google's image search. You can use that to know when the image was uploaded, the time, and other features that will help you know that you are choosing the right image for the right story, because the image has to tally with the story that you are putting out there as well. The other fact-checking tools too, there's political fact. Yes, there is also the Google AI Explorer. Yes, so there are so many tools that when you surf the net, you can actually find to have more insight into it that will help you also stay safe while surfing the net.
And I know that Ghana Web, you also gather a lot of stories. And of course, a lot of media houses do that as well. Sometimes when the story is that big and you're unable to have access to the source of the story, for instance, the person who did the interview, you want to pick it and give credit. How do you verify which one is true, which one isn't?
Right. So we have the media partners too, and then we have our competitors. Let me say that. So the ones that you find on your competitors' platform that you know it is true, like he said, you know that TV3 is credible. So when I see a story on TV3, I would want to rewrite because we do not have it. It means that you've already done your checks before putting it out there. Once we are also rewriting the story, we also have to pay attention to the details. In case you missed it, we have to now call back for follow-up to that particular story. Then for the curators, Ghana News Agency too, they have some processes they go through before the story is finally on the website. So they are also our partners. We pick their stories, so we curate from them, and then we source it to them because it belongs to them.
And let me say that I was given that earlier example about the local dialect media station which reported the flood and the buildings that had collapsed. That's many, many years ago before I joined Media Journal. And of course, we did our corrections later and, should I say, learned our lessons moving forward. put in a lot more rigorous structures. But I'm coming back to you, Mr. Deborah. You're in that space where, like, a lot of things break very quickly. If you can tell us, based on your own information as gathered, to what extent, how bad this has been, and really the kind of impact that it has had on people. Madam Beatrice Ajiman earlier talked about, in a second, losing your credibility because somebody went to publish a fake or an information that wasn't really accurate.
I mean, the reality starts in when you go out and then you hear people discuss issues as though they were true. They really believe everything they see, even if it's a joke, and sometimes it's clearly. I mean, you have to listen to it and know that it's a joke, and then you go on the street and you see how people are discussing and believing it was real. Then it hits you and say, Chale, people are naive and they will believe everything. So I often like to look at this issue on the two sides, because once the audience becomes very informed and not so naive, they can call the bluffs, so to say, and know that this is not correct. I mean, now things are becoming, with AI and all of that, it's becoming next level difficult to sometimes tell what is accurate and what is not. But regardless, when you have some level of thinking, you can look at something and say, something is off. So for me, the reality comes when I go to events, and sometimes even with other colleagues, and they're discussing issues and the angles they are coming in, and it's like they believe everything that they saw on that platform. It makes you aware that, I mean, I'll put myself as an example. What's his name? Kevin Taylor would say things, and I will post something, and when people come and leave comments and believe it so much that they think that is the fact and they're attacking me for it, I'm like, this is where we are getting to. So it hits home. You're able to actually see the impact of this misinformation and disinformation.
Mr. Krobia, what loopholes do you see in the system that you believe have helped worsen the situation?
Well, we have structural problems in dealing with this issue. For starters, if when you tell people, people wouldn't believe. But we have had the Ghana's media airways was liberalized somewhere around 95 and 96. It is 2025 and we don't have a broadcasting law. So you set up a radio or TV station today, there is no law guiding you on what to broadcast and what not to broadcast. That is telling. You see, so when people begin to jump the gun and say, oh, we are going to pass law for this, that, go to Parliament. It's been on their shelves for many years, over decades.
I was mentioning earlier that the Communications Minister, Sam George, is already considering putting a bill in before Parliament that would look at dealing with misinformation. You do not think that's enough?
I actually think that, you see, I have not seen the bill. I was having a conversation with Jerry about it. But even the posturing and the presentation on the law alone, you know, gives me worry. The UNESCO in 2024, November, published a guideline on dealing with misinformation, disinformation, and the digital space. And essentially, the guideline says that we should protect human rights and hold to account the platform owners, because they will have to deal with the problem. But if I see the minister posture that communicates that we will look for the people who are sharing false information and we will deal with them, then you give me a certain sense that you are arranging a law that will look for the users and then look for a way to punish them. Now, I do not in any way try to encourage that people should abuse the platform. But my co-panelists here have helped in explaining that there is misinformation and there is disinformation. And the difference between the two is intent. Intent is what the law courts have been dealing with. when there's murder and there is manslaughter, it is that borderline. It's a very difficult thing. I am saying that we need to be very careful. I have not seen the bill, but I'm saying some of the communication, rather than we looking at it generally to see what can we do. The data shows that the people who spread more false information, and I have been leading the team at Fact Check Ghana for many years. The data on those who share false information are the politicians. The politicians are the people who are dealing with, who are really behind it. But if we frame it as if we are looking for the users on the social media platform to punish them, then that's a problem. You had asked me an earlier question. Let me try and answer before I lose my thoughts. I was saying that we don't have a broadcasting bill, and that is where we should start from. What if we give you an allocation or a frequency to a radio station? What can you broadcast? What can't you broadcast? It is why we are seeing send them namin sendo. Bring it and let me double it for you. Sika Gari and all those nonsense. It's because
I thought it was being dealt with right now, at least gradually.
look, we can deal with it at the level of criminality, right? But there's between criminality and non-crime, there's a lot of gap and nuances in there that there's no structure. I know the NMC somewhere around 2014, 2015, tried to pass the LI 2224 or something like that, because that law had its challenges. But we should first look for a broadcasting bill. Secondly, let us begin to look at how do we have a conversation around the social media platforms and its regulation, so that we'll protect human rights, we'll allow people to have free speech, but we'll also make sure that we don't abuse the platform. And now there's AI, there's extended reality and all that. If all of them, in the confluence of all of them, we begin to need to look at them. European Union has passed an AI law, right, to regulate AI. They have passed the data media yes.
And I know in the UK, for instance,
yes,
they've been talking about digital ID and all of that, with former Prime Minister Tony Blair leading the conversation.
Good. So we are really lagging behind when it comes to first the legal aspect of things. Then we can move to the normative side of things, okay? Building a verification culture even among journalists. How do we train our young people, with media information literacy? At what point should a young person appreciate that this is information being presented to me as news? This is actually advert. A radio presenter is speaking, playing music, presenting news at one point, and they switch to an LPM, and they will present their LPM as if they have tasted the product, they have drank it, they give it thumbs up. How will we differentiate? We need to inculcate all those habits in our little ones, in our church. So there's a whole structure that we are lagging that we need to begin to look at.
So let me ask you this very briefly before I come to Madam Ernestina Asante. I was talking earlier about what the government said, that it is going to look at the IP addresses of individuals who are hiding behind anonymity just to misbehave. You're saying we should be careful. What immediately comes to mind regarding how we can deal with that, at the same time looking at the institutionalized nature of really sending false information?
I tell you what, some tech guys on Facebook try to run, a module of a sort, tracking IP addresses of people's posts on social media. And when they did it, the thing tracked, all of them tracked to Accra. Even though some of them were in Volta region, Eastern region, IP address is based on the PC you are looking for, right? Sometimes the PC has traveled like through 5 owners before it gets to you. Of course, the tech people, when it gets to the security level, will have the sophistication. I am pretty sure that in some of the advanced countries, they will be able to do that. Maybe we can get it. But for me, I am more interested on the human rights aspect of things. If clearly people are sharing hate speech that is injurious to our social cohesion, then let's deal with it. But we need to hasten slowly to get a structure that can work and not based on an individual's whims and caprices. This person has said this, so immediately let's move in. IP address no leads to your home. Yeah, sure. We have grabbed you, because we found the IP addresses, and before you realize, I know nothing about it, and things like that. So I'm saying, let's really look at it very well. But our focus should be at protecting human rights, and ensuring free speech, because the social media platform has been marked as the liberating platform. When it merged, literature in media and social, they call it the liberating platform, because for once, the media platform had been democratized. Power to share information did not only rely in the hands of editors who have practiced for 20 years to set agenda, or radio station people, but now we could all share platforms. Ghana's democracy, to an extent, where we are and how government react to issues, is because of the social media platforms. You introduce a bill today, it is trending #1, people are crying and shouting at you. The next moment you draw it, you draw it away. And so we need to be careful that we don't put a platform where people can talk. And we work in the West Africa space, in places like Mali now, in Togo, even Togo now, people can't speak. On social media, you make a post, they are coming after you. So we need to really balance it well and find a thin line or a perfect fit. Well, if there's anything like that, to walk the path.
We need to manage it well. Thank you very much, Mr. Kwekuke Kobia. And of course, we're still on the Africa Digital Forum Dialogue 2025, the first of 4 that we'll be having throughout the next weeks that are coming up. When we come back, we'll get a thought of Madam Ernestina Asante, as well as Mr. Jerry Sam, on really what we need to do to move forward, what kind of governance structures we need to put in place in order to manage the digital space very well. Just stay with us.
From gutters to innovation hubs, from pollution to prosperity, Ghana's plastic story is being rewritten. Join the Media General Waste Summit 2025 as policymakers, business leaders, and change makers unite to transform waste into opportunity. Let's filter our future for cleaner cities, healthier lives, and a stronger circular economy. Venue, Labadi Beach Hotel. Date 28th October 2025. Live on TV3, 3FM. Visit
And you're welcome back. You're still here on the Africa Digital Dialogue, organized by Media General in conjunction with Africa Digital Foundation. Of course, here at Media General under the auspices of the digital team. And we've been talking combating misinformation in the digital age. Let me acknowledge the presence of Mr. George Bosompim, who is with the National Academy of Film Art. Please, if you could kindly lift your hands, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. We also do have with us a representative from Up to Match. If you're here, please, a round of applause for him. Thank you so much for joining us as well. And of course, our distinguished ladies and gentlemen in our midst, we're still privileged, again, having in our midst the group CEO, Madam Beatrice Adjuman here with us. Thank you very much for staying with us. So before we went on that break, we were talking about really the loopholes in Ghana, dealing with misinformation quite difficult for us. And I want to go to Madam Ernestina Asante. Okay, before I go to Madam Asante, Mr. Bosompim actually has a very quick submission and would love to invite you to give us your thought. Okay, please, you don't have to come here, just sit down.
Oh, yeah, I'm okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, there are two things I want us to look at. First is the convergence. You know, the traditional media and digital media. There's some kind of convergence. There's a media convergence that we need to accept. Because even if radio, if you're doing normal radio, there's Facebook, there's all that, and there's most of them are real life, YouTube and the rest. You know, so we need to be very careful about that. So in dealing with that, we need to produce our programs very well. I'm coming from television, the television and radio angle, where we think that you could just say anything and get away with it. You know, so that's the first thing. How do we produce it? There should be research. Do the media houses have their research team solid enough to do their work? That's the question I'm asking. And I'm also asking whether we have properly trained producers. Because some of the times I sit and watch or even listen and I cringe. And sometimes I call into programs and ask who is producing. Because I don't want to talk to the journalists there, because that journalists have been fed with information to give out to us. Who fed that person that information? And some of them are so basic, even pronunciation of names, of towns, of people in Ghana. And these are Ghanaians that speaking, I mean, as if they are not even Ghanaians, because they can't even pronounce names. And growing up, when there was only GTV, you could see the diction, the pronunciation of words. You know, even if the person reading is not from that particular tribe or this thing, he doesn't even speak that dialect, the manner in which he will put it out there, you see that that person is trained. And so that's what we also have to look at. And then making resource people look as if they are, you know, kind of experts in everything. So I can see that same person on this program, on this other program, another program, pretending to be an expert in health, digital media, you know, agri, everything. And why do they do that? They do that because they look at following. I've had that kind of a problem before where people invite me to things and I don't go. I say, look, this thing that you're asking me to come and do, I'm not the right person. There's the other person that you can go to. And I'll point to another person so that person will come and sit in. Do you understand? But there are people who would just accept anything. In as much as they are coming on television or they are coming on radio, that's fine. So, but it affects the content. And so it is, for me, the onus lies on the producer to do that work with the researcher. That's the first thing. The other thing is to buttress what Mr. Akrobi Asante said about the broadcast bill. In 2007, this same house sent me to that committee that was drafting that thing. At the time, with it was Dr. Atuguba, now Professor Atuguba. He was leading that thing with Mr. Brefi Apinting. I think he's a board member of Media Journal. You know, solid team. And they drafted something very nice. 2007 March, that's when I attended that thing. The next time I saw it was 7 years after. Then the last time I saw it was 2015 that I saw it again. And the whole thing, the teeth, everything is gone. Basically, it won't bite if they pass it today. You know why? Because politicians have decided to dilute it. At the time that they started the thing, politicians do not own media houses. So they were not worried at all because they've written it in there that no political party or political group should own a media house. Same thing applies to the religion thing. Now we are doing magic on television and radio, where they are doubling money and all this kind of thing. All those things are in there, yet now, the new one that is coming out, the last one I saw, they are going to take all those things out. So where is it? It won't bite. So I'm just saying that, look, we need to look at our structures, like he said, and even what we have now, NCA, where is their role? Because when you're going to renew your license, I'm asking, what do they do at all? Do they just collect money and that's it? Because when you are going to apply, I've helped people apply for it before, the license before. When you are going to apply, they ask you, what kind of content are you bringing? All those things. Then when there's an issue, they tell you that, oh, we don't deal with content. We deal with infrastructure. So why were you asking for it? Why were you asking for it? If you deal with infrastructure.
So we should streamline our systems.
That's the thing. The other thing is Media Commission. Where's the TT bite? National Media Commission. It should be operating like Ofcom in the UK, where the head of that particular is more like a judge. So whatever he says is law. So when you go for that mediation and all those, and it doesn't work out, and they have to bring out that kind of a rule, it's basically law. These are the kind of things that we need to look at. Otherwise, we'll be talking and talking and talking and talking.
Mr. Bosompim, I have just 3 questions for you, and if you would kindly answer them very briefly. The first one is the submission you made earlier. You seem to suggest that there's a need for journalists to specialize so that you're not a jack of all trades and you're doing everything, especially when it comes to thematic areas, sports, business, health, etc. Whose responsibility is that? The journalist, him or herself, or the media house saying that, looking at your work, I think that this could be your strong area, and so you should specialize here, so when we are doing programs, we can put you forward on that?
I think it's about both ways, because you as a person who also have, you also have your career path that you want to select. So that's one thing. Then the other thing is for the media house to also identify that. And that will be based on in-house training and all those kind of things. And basically the supervisors are supposed to look at that and say, okay, this person is very good for that. So that's the essence of the media house, to do that. Then there's that bit where the other bit I was talking about, where the producers should be selecting the right people for the content that they are creating. So you don't just go and bring a new resource person and think that person could do magic because he has 10,000 following. So you can come and sit there and talk about football, finish talk about health, and talk about agric. You can't do that.
The second question is, sometimes when you're interacting with people, they seem to tell you that, well, it's not a problem if I don't pronounce words correctly. At the end of the day, I'm speaking English. How do you get people, and I know there are students here and as well as those who are watching, to be interested in ensuring that the diction and everything, at least they are trying to get it correctly?
I think the media, you see, the power of the media is so big that we shouldn't underestimate it. We are supposed to what? Inform, educate. So why do you think you should just pronounce anything anyhow? And it doesn't necessarily have to deal with English. I'm talking about all the languages, our dialects. Today, we even at home, we are speaking English with our children. They don't even understand our traditional languages. Where would they learn it from? When I was growing up, my father let you go and buy the newspaper. By the time you get to the house, you've read all the headlines and everything. And so he asks questions before he even takes the newspaper from you. The other bit is for you to sit by the television and listen. So talking point and all those things, you have to listen to it. And when he comes, you come and sit by it. The next thing is, oh, what new word did you learn? Are we doing that same thing now? Parenting has now become more like, let's just buy gadgets and give it to our children, that's all. And you leave them anywhere for them to go and just play with it.
Thank you very much. I'll have to ask my third question later, Mr. George Bosompim. If we could kindly give him a quick round of applause for that. Thank you very much. So I'm coming to you, Madam Ernestine Asante, just picking it from where Mr. Akrobi Asante left off, and then we'll get a thought of Mr. Jerry Sam as well.
Okay, so I know that government has adopted digital economy policy, and this policy seeks to outline goals for digital inclusion, content moderation. We also have the Cybersecurity Act 2020, amended 2024, that is also looking at misinformation and all. They have implemented it, but when it comes to enforcement, that is where the challenge lies. So they need to enforce the law, make sure that people adhere to it. Because once you are browsing the net, you are consuming content, you end up getting things that you didn't even ask for based on the algorithms. So that is something that government needs to look at. And then on the part of training journalists, so maybe Dubawa, Ghana Fact Check can liaise with media houses to train journalists on how to identify fake news in the era of deepfakes and all. We should be able to know that, oh, their lips do not really synchronize with the gestures that the person in the video is talking about. So if you spot all these things, you identify them, then we are helping sanitize the digital space. Also, maybe GJA and then the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, GIBA, can also designate their industry growth fund in helping independent journalists also carry out their mandates effectively and efficiently.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sam. Your thoughts really on how to ensure that we are even utilizing the platforms responsibly, especially for those in the digital space.
Thank you. So laws are all right, but then, in developing those laws or implementing it, shouldn't be to police free speech, but rather to advance the truth and also allow people to, express themselves without, stepping out of boundaries. The AU Digital Transformation, Agenda 2020 to 2030, basically asks member states to advance freedom of expression, but rather hold the platforms to account. That is where, the key issues are. So are the platforms, for instance, taking down content? Are they clear about how they take that content? Do we have processes for appealing content, take down? But then to the law, we have the right to information law. Is it accessible? When we have these laws, are they accessible? People know what is in it. What are the clear objectives? So most of our existing laws have very vague, inbuilt objectives. So you have causing fear and panic. You have restoring public order, national security. These are all subject to, subjective interpretation, which, can be used against dissent, people who criticize government, and all of that. The bottom line for us is that we should make the platforms accountable, not only accountable in terms of taking down content about disinformation, but then also work with, fact-checking organization, local fact-checking organization, who are able to contextualize content, understand that, this particular content goes against this particular cultural group. This particular content is actually disinformation, because disinformation, what's disinformation in Ghana may not be disinformation elsewhere. And without contextualizing it and understanding nuances, we will still have disinformation, playing up on social media platforms. So yes, indeed, we need laws, but the key thing for us is education. One of the best forms of vaccines against disinformation is an informed citizenry who can see that this content is disinformation, is harmful. I should be critical about it. I shouldn't just spread it as I see it, but then, call it out, take action and call people out. One of the basic problem, just to end on that, is also our culture and also the use of WhatsApp. WhatsApp is widespread now. I mean, majority of us use WhatsApp. And WhatsApp's end-to-end encryption, which is meant to protect privacy, at the same time makes it very difficult to moderate. So we can do all the fact-checking platforms. We can't get into these platforms. And also the group feature, where either your old school group, your family group. Our culture respects collective decision-making, group harmony. And you see that an auntie will post, an elderly auntie or grandmother will post something that clearly is disinformation. But because of this respect culture we have and group harmony, you don't call it out. And all of this actually spreads disinformation. So that's why I come back to the education. So once you have the education, you can have intergenerational workshops where the youth who know what's up can educate their elders so that we bring it down.
At what point can we have those in schools, for instance?
Exactly. One of the things we're advocating is even adopt what is happening in Finland, Estonia. I know Rwanda is doing it. South Africa is also doing it. They're integrating digital media information literacy into curriculum, so that kids right from catch them young, right from an early stage, can understand how the media works. So anything that goes outside, the premise of how the media works, they're able to identify it. So they're able to verify their own sources. They're able to, know which particular platforms to go for the right information, or even cross-check or fact-check information, understand how, sources work, and then call them out. So it's very good that we integrate it into, local curriculums. And then at the same time also, if we can, input media information literacy in community engagements. So we have this community health nurses who go around. If they are media information literate, they go around, they can debunk or bust myths around health disinformation, for instance.
And I would come to the audience very shortly for questions, but just very quickly, Mr. Kobi Asante, you were saying that we should have a thin line between not taking people's free speech away, but also ensuring that people are using the space responsibly. Recently, I was watching a news item in the US where 12-year-olds were found dead because of what they call surfing game. They go on top of subways and just, play and all of that. And they had seen so many videos, and it was influencing these children to do that. So eventually what authorities decided to do was to pull down a lot of the videos, thousands of them. How do you think it's something that we can adopt in Ghana, where if authorities see content that is not favorable, I think Mr. Sam mentioned even the Boku case, we've seen radio stations closed and all of that, where authorities can unilaterally perhaps pull those down just to prevent it from spreading further?
Yeah, certainly. If it's clear that this is harmful content, no two ways about that. Look, when they shut down about 4 or 5 radio stations in Boko, we supported it, but raised concerns about how it was done, which is always the case. And Mr. Bosompim here was talking about the problem with the NCA and the NMC thing. The NCA will tell you that they don't deal with content. We are just about the spectrum and the infrastructure. Everything content go to the National Media Commission. But then they were shutting down radio stations in Boko and those places for spreading harmful content. And we were saying, why did you not consult the National Media Commission so that the commission that has the constitutional powers to therefore judge content would therefore have given you the green light, but you decided to, because then you set a precedent where tomorrow the NCA can shut down content. And the problem with NCA shutting down content is that it is under the arm of the executive. It is under the politician's control, as against the NMC that is independent. Do you understand? So now connecting to your point, anytime there's content like that, it is important that it is taken down. The problem has always been that when it comes to upside of things, the digital platform owners, which is a part that we have not been paying attention to, do not feel that they have to be held accountable. Colleagues from Ghana Fact did some work about groups on Facebook that were spreading serious hate speech on this Boku issue. They talk.
Please wrap up for us so we can get questions.
It took long for Facebook to take it down. So my point is that it is important, but we need to do it right. We need to do it well, again, being conscious of people's rights so that free speech can still move.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kobi Asante. Please, if you have any questions for any of our panel, please let us know by show of hand. Okay, there's a lady who has a question here.
Thank you. It's actually been an amazing panel and discussion. Knowing that as a journalist, I've also enjoyed this a lot. And I want to say that, can the panel share with us some of the consequences they have faced whilst performing their duties, so that we can really relate and understand that it is real. Misinformation and disinformation have consequences. So if you can share real-time experiences, we would be very grateful, and as journalists, we would also learn from that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more, and then the panel can quickly answer.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. So my question is, we are in a digital age where we have long bypassed the time where we have institutions that give us formal information. Right now, everybody have access to phone. So now people think me having access to phone, I'm eligible to report on certain issues that happen or give out news. Therefore, we have students or we have ordinary people who just turn up. We don't know where they are, but then they get the opportunity to broadcast information on the media, which likely could be false. But then here's the case, there's no way you could access these people and punish them for their action, because we know that professional journalists have their details. So if a report is wrong, we can trace it and we can punish them. But these people, we can't trace them. So how are we looking to address this kind of issue? Because if it is not addressed as we grow, it will continue to happen, and then it will not even be more of the professional journalists who are doing the misinformation spreading, but actually ordinary people who just think they have access to phone.
And please, we'll be grateful if you're brief. I'll come back for the second round of questions, but I want to start with you, Mr. Mia Deborah. The first question about real-time experience, and this one by the young man.
Well, I'm hoping that I've done my work so well that I wouldn't have such an experience to share. So I don't have a direct experience that maybe I did something it impacted negatively on the person. But like I shared earlier, there have been examples where people switch on their camera and say all things about me, and then people take it into account to be real, and then I walk into town and I have people approach me based on what has been said about me, and it wasn't a good place to be. And so that is the example I can share with that. And to the second question, I think that's what we all here, to find out ways, one, to identify credible sources and let people know that these are people that you can rely on for A or B, and then also maybe be able to, in the same way, call out people who are not doing it right. I think sometimes when we do that, I belong to an association called New Media Association of Ghana, and we have regular meetings every now and then. And funny enough, an incident happened with one person. There was a week when one person did something, people were lambasting him, and then we go to a meeting on the a following day or so, and then I bring it up and I put him up on the spot and let them know this was wrong. And again, he didn't even know it was wrong. So we had to keep saying it, and then when we left that meeting, we hoped that he understood that what he did was wrong and wasn't going to repeat a similar thing. So I think sometimes the bodies and groups we belong to should be able to sort of call it out. Sometimes we feel attacked when it's coming from our side, but when we listen amongst our peers, we have that sort of solution or approach coming, we might listen. So that's what I say to that.
Ms. Akrobi Asante, what have you got to add to it?
Well, I'm not a celebrity like you, so sorry, I don't get people coming at me, even though sometimes it does happen. In the lead up to the elections, I produced a fact-check report about how it was beginning to become clear that one of the leading politicians was trying to buy his way into the media by, invited them and gave them so much money, some as high as 10,000 and things like that. I verified the information and published it. And some of the team on social media went for my photos, my 10-year-old photos, some tagging me, calling me all sorts of names. But that's just on that aspect of things. At the Fourth Estate, where we do hardcore investigations, Charlie, plenty suits, plenty people trying to gag us. In fact, even before you publish a story, you publish a flyer that you're going to publish soon, and then they run to court and seek injunction and things like that. Look, I can be very plain on this. The national service scandal that we broke, for instance, when we announced that we were going to publish, they went to court, secured an ex parte injunction twice on us. And these things happen a lot. I do not say this to discourage journalists. I think it comes with the work that we do. You have to toughen up and deal with it. The other question, look, is a difficult question that the world is trying to deal with now. How do we ensure accountability for social media users who are abusing the platform, and also make sure that we do not really abuse it in a way that we will shut people up, right? And that's what we are trying to. People have used Digital Services Act in Europe. That's what I was talking about. People also look out for stuff like that, people and deal with it. For those who don't know, last year, a blogger was jailed 30 days, right? His name is Jeffrey Nyame, for publishing a story on his blog that some Bank of Ghana, whatever.
Yes.
Right? Your time, right? So look, let's all be responsible. Be responsible. Be conscious of who you are sharing information about and what it means, because there are criminal aspects of things. I do not really agree to some of the criminal provisions in there, but it can come to you. Somebody has been jailed. Some people are still standing trial, and perhaps they
Unfortunately,
can
we can't even go into the recent story that broke about a student suing his university for using AI to write his thesis that the school thought was too advanced and all of that. But please, if you can get us your thoughts.
Yes. He has actually mentioned one. You have to be responsible. In as much as you have your phones, you are recording, if you are wrong, just apologize. Let the public know that, oh, the earlier post I made, the facts were not right. I have it now, and that this is the true state of whatever I wanted to tell you earlier. Also, you rectify the issue. If you are unsure, ask. If you don't know or you've not gotten the right answers, hold on. Once you get your facts right, you can go ahead and publish your story or content on social media.
Mr. Jerry-Sam?
Thank you. So on a personal experience, no, but from my organization, I mean, during COVID time, we were doing a lot of work around ensuring that people will go for the vaccine. And in the end, we got, because most of our funding and our support comes from the West, we actually promote the Western agenda. And then they linked even vaccine to Western agenda to reduce Ghana's population, so people should not go and take the vaccine. But that's on the side. But you see that the critical bit about it is that this information actually affects our livelihood itself. It's, you know, I think WHO called it infodemic as well. On the issue about how we can, you know, curb this problem, I think that's why we're having this conversation. And I think the youth particularly are the epicenter of, you know, this conversation, because they are the first, you know, receivers of information. I mean, most youth now spend most time on social media. They're always on their phone. As I learned a report that, I mean, we're going to evolve as human beings, working with our necks slammed down, because everybody's always on their phone. But the youth at the same time presents a solution for us. But then before, you know, we can rely on the youth, you know, we have to channel that digital knowledge and literacy to become part of, you know, the fight against disinformation, that they should be able to call out. But before then, they need to also have the skills. They have to, you know, have the knowledge on how to, you know, take action. But at the bottom line, we all have to be critical users of the media.
We all have to be critical users. So I would ask the last question of Mr. Bosompim, and I'll come back 30 seconds each for your final word before we close. But Mr. Bosompim, the last question I wanted to ask you has to do with the local dialect media, space where you have the presenters having scripts written in English, and they want to present it in such a way that the local person would understand. And sometimes the complaint is that they over-elaborate and they go beyond the fact. How do you think that could as well be managed so that everybody is staying in line?
I think that is why we have the School of Languages. The essence of that school is to, you know, help us deal with these kind of problems. Where media, I mean, of course, if Media General sees somebody in town and it feels that person is a very good linguist somewhere, and they want to use that person should be trained at least in-house. You could get the School of Languages to come and help them do that. You know, besides that, that person coming in should also think about self, you know, help by virtue of going to try and, you know, get some kind of training in addition to what he or she has. Because he mentioned talent, the use of talent. Some of these guys are very good out there. But when they come in here, you also have your in-house kind of guidelines and things like that. And so they should also go and conform to that kind of guidelines. How do they conform to it if you yourself would not help them to do that? So that's how we have to deal with it. Because sometimes they simple news and they give a whole lot of commentary. Why? Because they want to give you a visual presentation of it. Do we really have to give that kind of vivid description of all those things? And sometimes where they will pass before they even get to the actual substance, you realize that at the end of it all, we lost the substance. Because people get angry about how they go around it, and the exaggeration. Too much. So we have a lot of work to do. As a media house, you have the responsibility, and those who are working for